Hello and welcome. Today is a special day. I want to share with you the story of Anor Londo. Now, as far as the path of the chosen undead, we are moving from Anor Londo to the Tomb of the Giants. As it turns out, Andre is actually the one we're going to be doing the upgrades from our divine weapon to an occult. But we're going to go to the Tomb of the Giants, strengthen our occult weapon, move from there, and take on the Wokest boss in Dark Souls. This is the boss that truly, just highlights the subversion of expectations, Hidetaka Miyazaki's magnum Wokest, if you will, the city of Anor Londo, bathed in sunlight. And if you'll remember, Gwyn is the Lord of Sunlight. Now, the Lord of Sunlight had 3 children that we will talk about. And those children were Solaire, who we know as Solaire of Astora. He was stripped of his family name, much like Rhea of Thorland, who is an undead cleric hailing from the House of Thorland, which, interestingly, the House of Thorland are adherents to the Allfather Lloyd, who created the Lloyd's Talisman, which happens to be a tool to hunt the undead. I wonder if the companions that Rhea are traveling with, I wonder if those people are safe people to travel with. You know, people from the House Thorland, the house that has a weapon against undead, who undead love their Estus Flask. We learned that in the beginning when we got our Estus Flask. I know I wasn't going to say, oh yeah, here's what the Estus Flask does, but the Estus Flask low-key kind of heals the undead. It's a link to the flame or the bonfires and stuff. Anyway, that's beside the point. Solaire, when we meet him, is staring up at the sun, and he says, "If only I could be so grossly incandescent." Now, when you consider what is happening in that scene, you have the Lord of Sunlight, Gwyn, who is absent from the land, and yet remnants of his power remain to be remembered even among those who lose their memories. The reason Solaire is drawn to the sun, the reason Solaire is a warrior of sunlight, Solaire is the firstborn son of Gwyn. The ebb of time is convoluted. It flows in strange manners upon the shores of the present to grant us these mysteries that we get to discover. And Solaire gave up his family name to follow the path of the chosen undead. Now, I know that if you go to the wiki, you'll see the Nameless King, this and that. But I am of the belief that Solaire is the firstborn son of Gwyn. I am of the belief that the curse of the undead is what stripped him of deific status. And I'm of the belief that Gwyndolin is a man raised by a woman, which is low-key woke AF. Now, Anor Londo, you look at that, city bathed in sunlight, right? Wrong. Actually, Gwyndolin is casting a sorcery over the entire place to make everyone believe that it's a city bathed in sunlight, ruled over by the illusion of Guinevere. Guinevere being the daughter of Lord Gwyn. Now, Guinevere being an illusion is interesting because in one of the item descriptions we learned she went off and married some dude and just kind of dipped out. She's no longer present in Anor Londo, kind of like the one that got away. Gwyndolin, however, is meant to uphold this illusion that everything in Anor Londo is fine, because this illusion is precisely what allows the chosen undead to believe that they are sort of carrying out the will of destiny as they go about linking the first flame. Now, when you meet Gwyndolin, do you think to yourself, oh, hey, this guy has tentacle legs, I ought to trust him? Or do you think to yourself, oh, geez, that's kind of a monster? Well, it's interesting because we're coming from the painted world where now we must question, what have we been doing as we go about our business? We start off with the Taurus demon, the Capra demon. We adorn ourselves the title of Dragon Slayer when we defeated the gaping dragon in the depths. But when we came upon Quelaag, who only stands in the path of the chosen undead on the way to the second bell of awakening, the second bell of awakening, by the way, which opens up the path to Anor Londo. Now, this is interesting because once in Anor Londo, it's the illusion of Guinevere that gives you the Lord Vessel. And once this Lord Vessel is placed, you have to go and collect the Lord Souls to place it in the vessel and open up the kiln of the first flame. Now, what could possibly be in the kiln of the first flame? We go to Gwyndolin to sort of try and figure that out. Now, Gwyndolin stands guard at the tomb of Gwyn. Now, this is interesting because Gwyn is passed away, but in legend, Gwyn linked the first flame. That's what we're on the path to do, is like Gwyn sacrificed himself for the first flame. So why is he in a tomb in Anor Londo? And again, I want to make it very clear. Gwyndolin is a man raised as a woman. There's a very big difference between that and a trans woman. I'm a trans woman. I am a woman who was raised as a man. I'm the opposite of woke. I'm like anti-woke, you know? Like if Gwyndolin's red pill, I'm blue pill. Or maybe he's blue pill and I'm red. He does the sorceries. I do the, see, we're in a faith-based build, but also we're moving towards the occult. But if you look at, okay, so we talked about sin a little bit. Now, Velka's talisman is a tuft of hair that belonged to Velka, and it allows the casting of miracles not with faith, but with intelligence. This is pretty significant because it's in the painted world that we see the most sort of illusions towards Velka. But the first time we encounter Velka's talisman is Oswald of Karim after the Belfry gargoyles in the undead parish. Sorry, I don't know if they're actually the Belfry gargoyles. They're just gargoyles of the church. Now, the significance here is Oswald of Karim is clearly a priest of some order that serves Velka, the goddess of sin. And again, we see the allusions towards Velka. Now, it's a tuft of hair, so obviously Velka's not a crow. Everyone stop saying she's a crow. We're going to leave it at that. She's a goddess. But between all these elements that we've explored, with Rhea being corralled to the north, the undead cleric, sort of like the cast out of her house, Solaire of Astora, of noble bloodline, clearly, because Astora is full of nobles, but with no sort of memory of what his purpose is outside of sort of like becoming one with the sun. And I don't know if you've ever stood in the sort of shadow of giants, but when you look up to someone, it's hard to believe you'll ever be able to attain the sort of glory that they have, especially when there's something along the lines of time. And I think the dynamic between a father and son, or father and child in general, there's a lot of experience that takes place before someone has a child. So Solaire being moved away from his family and stuff makes sense, especially going through the same journey as Rhea of Thorland. Again, you're not alone as the chosen undead. You just happen to be the one who escaped the undead asylum, because at one point we were corralled to the north. And what's interesting is after you get the Dark Moon Seance ring and you go and fight Gwyndolin, you walk into the tomb of Gwyn. And when you look in the tomb of Gwyn, you realize Gwyn isn't there. The firstborn son left on the tomb of Gwyn a gift. I think it's the Sunlight Blade Miracle, which is a very sort of cool little, oh yeah, it's faith-based. Oh hey, you know who else does all these miracles and stuff? Solaire. Huh, weird. I don't wonder if there's a link. Anyway, sorry, the wiki says it's the Nameless King. I'm pretty sure it's not the Nameless King. I haven't played Dark Souls 3, and I don't really like look at the lore beyond the first game, but to me, the first game's always been its own little self-contained thing, because when you go down to Ash Lake, you see all the other trees, which each carry their own stories with them. That is to say, Anor Londo is the Wokest location, because when you kill Guinevere, you remove the illusion that it's a city of sunlight and the dark is cast over it. The Dark Moon Blades then become hostile towards you, and you notice that the world is not near as sort of big and grandiose. It's much more sort of eerie. Now, firstborn son of Gwyn, probably a big fan of Sun. Dark Moon, Gwyndolin. All right. Now, Dragon Slayer, Ornstein, Executioner, Smote, we're not even gonna. They were a hassle, but I mean, persistence is key with anything, and I think over time, going up against them and just continuing to try the same technique over and over and over and over, I think eventually I was able to just beat out the game, and the game got bored and let me win. But after all of this, what's interesting is we take the Lord Vessel from Guinevere. We came to Firelink Shrine. Now, Firelink Shrine, the path of the chosen undead, everyone's been telling us we must link the flame. But when we went and defeated the 4 kings, we met someone by the name of Darkstalker Kaith, or Primordial Serpent Kaith. I don't remember his name. And he has access to the kiln of the first flame too. He, interestingly enough, also shares with us a little bit of story beyond what was shared after we defeat Gwyndolin, who, if you look at the Dark Moon Seance ring, he's the last living entity. That's how you can tell that Gwyndolin is making the illusion of Guinevere. And then the Dark Moon Blades are meant to keep that secret because the undead needs to be in a state of believing that they are serving the great Lord Gwyn. There has to be this sort of drive to compel the chosen undead to their course of destiny, which was set forth by probably the lords themselves when, I mean, you got the Witch of Izalith turning herself into the bed of chaos to try and recreate the first flame. You have Cephas Scaleless creating sort of abominations to the world and then casting them aside without ever giving them the loving care and nurturing nature that, like, sort of parenthood should entail. You have all these elements at play, but who are the monsters? They aren't the people we're fighting against as we go through the game. They are the lords themselves. The mission of the lords is monstrous because it holds barriers around the chosen undead that we don't even have the opportunity to see. And Darkstalker Kaith is going to let us know. You remember back a few months, I said, the furtive pygmy has nothing to do with the fate of the undead. You know, the chosen undead, furtive pygmy, separate things entirely. Well, you might also remember I said, fond memories comfort travelers. And let me tell you, that is a fond memory because we are not just a chosen undead who is meant to follow in the steps of Lord Gwyn. We are a descendant of the great Dark Lord himself. The furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten, decided to wait while the lords shared in the power of the flame, realizing that in waiting, dark would come about again, because just as fire had created disparity, that disparity would one day be no more. To all things antiquity, and to the Dark Lord, the age of man would be brought about only if the first flame were to ever be extinguished. The only way to ensure such course of action would be through the defeat of Lord Gwyn himself. But Lord Gwyn is in a tomb in Anor Londo, isn't he? No. Lord Gwyn is being held prisoner in the kiln of the first flame, and that's precisely why we need to go and gather the souls of lords, put them in the Lord Vessel, open the kiln of the first flame, defeat Lord Gwyn himself, Lord of Sunlight, take his ass down, and become the Dark Lord. Now, you might be asking, isn't that the bad guy? Isn't that the bad guy ending? I thought we were doing the chosen undead. Well, my friends, the issue is the fate of the chosen undead is not to be the continuance of the Age of Fire. You're not supposed to link the flame any longer. You're supposed to recognize that that flame by which we are granted immortality relative to the hollows we live amongst, this age has reached its twilight. We are no longer at a point where we can sit around and wait patiently for the world to fix itself. The lords we once knew and counted on have become nothing more than the monsters that they claim to defend us against. And so it is just that we must rise up and become the Dark Lord ourselves. And It's unfortunate because the world is painted in such a way that it feels like such a grand purpose to be the one to change, and we're gonna succeed the Lord Gwyn and link the first flame. A heroic notion indeed. But the thing about linking the flame is that in doing so, you remove all other lords from the path to linking the flame. The chosen undead is the first to go and link the flame after the Lord Gwyn, but once the flame is linked once, the path is clear for any undead following, and we see the hollowing of the undead who try alongside us, but when those paths are open and any undead can go and sacrifice themselves to the first flame, the propaganda of believing that it is of noble purpose to do so is actually pretty destructive. So, I know you might not realize it, but when you take someone who is one gender and raise them under a social structure that's another gender, that's actually sort of like a system of oppression, because you're imprinting an illusion upon them, an illusion of social constructs whereby they have to act within certain norms and regulations. So that's where Gwyndolin able to develop his moon magics and stuff, and work in creating his I guess, projection of a utopian ideal that never was. He wishes his father were to love him as he possibly loved his firstborn son. But could you imagine being the second-born son of Gwyn, the firstborn son leaving after Lord Gwyn goes mad, linking himself to the first flame, and you're the one that's left? Your sister's been married off. You're sitting in Anor Londo alone? Well, that's Gwyndolin. It's really sad. Because even still, sitting alone, it's not as if he can accept the world around him. He has to cast these illusions. And I know I said it's for the chosen undead, but could you imagine if he were doing it for himself, for that slight moment where he might be able to forget that his father is gone. His father has hollowed himself out by linking the first flame. It's heavy. But there are a lot of heavy things in Dark Souls. Anyway, I just wanted to share all that. Gwyndolin is incredibly woke as a character, and there is a lot more depth to many of the aspects of the lore that I don't think I get to go into just for sheer time purposes. But I'm so excited because I think in the next few videos, we're going to actually just do Lord, and then we should be at Gwyn. Actually, Lord, DLC, Gwyn, New Game Plus. Because, you know, beating it once, that's like, you know, any undead can do that. But beating it twice, that's something only the chosen undead can do. And thank you so much for joining me on this journey. It's wonderful to have you, and it's wonderful to be back and telling you the story of Dark Souls. I know there was a lot of controversy when I first said Dark Souls was woke, but this is it. Anor Londo, Hidetaka Miyazaki's magnum Wokest. Gwyndolin. The writing was on the walls the entire time. The tomb was empty, and yet we didn't realize that as the chosen undead being held prisoner, the reason we might sympathize with Gwyn is because Gwyn also is being held prisoner. Prisoner to ideas that he cannot let go because he's stuck in the Age of Flame. But we can bring about the Age of Dark. We can be the Dark Lord. We can progress forward because we don't have to live in an eternal twilight. We can make the world our eternal twilight. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I will have more for you in the weeks coming up, and I look forward to sharing more Dark Souls with you. And yeah, just have a good one. Bye.
The Dark Lord, who would one day be born amongst them, Lord Gwyn resisted the course of nature by sacrificing himself to link the fire and commanding his children to shepherd the humans. Gwyn has blurred your past to prevent the birth of the Dark Lord. I am the primordial serpent, I seek to right the wrongs of the past, to discover our true Lord. But the other servant, Frapped, lost his sense and befriended Lord Gwyn. Undead warrior, we stand at a crossroads. Only I know the truth about your fate. You must destroy the fading Lord Gwyn, who has coddled fire and resisted nature, and become the fourth Lord, so that you may usher in an age of dark. Very well. I shall now guide you to Gwyn's prison. Be still, and trust thine flesh to me. This is Gwyn's prison. Now, place the Lord Vessel upon